we're going to be discussing today is basically a progression moving towards a rear foot elevated split squat, also known as a Bulgarian squat. For us, I find this is extremely important for our athletes. With the amount of bilateral work we do, we find a lot of asymmetries in movement patterns. And so one of the reasons we like to bring in single leg work to our program is obviously to train each side of the body a little bit more independently, but also to get a little bit more direct work on the hamstrings, the ratio of the quad to hamstring work within the movement pattern. And then also the majority of our sport is played on a single leg. And so, being bilateral athletes, we have to get good at learning how to work unilaterally as well.
Good, yeah.
So our first movement is basically a traditional split squat. So we're going to go into a split squat pattern, both feet on the ground, and we're doing an iso hold basically. And the reason we're doing this is to get strong in the bottom position, the most extended position of the movement, but it also just gives us a framework as a coach to look and see what we have with our athletes before we start progressing them through the patterns as they get to the more advanced movement. So Brian's going to go into a split squat position. Okay, the biggest thing we're looking for when he gets into a split squat position is that, I'm looking to make sure the knee is over the toe. Now, obviously in the top position, it's usually pretty where we want it to be. Where we need to watch is as he moves down into the pattern and goes into the hold, we want to make sure that we have proper traction. The knee's not going outside, the pressure on his foot's not rotating in or out as he moves through the pattern. Now, pretty simple. Brian's going to get in this top position. We want to pull the rib cage down so that we're getting to a neutral spine, and then he's going to drop right down, taking the back knee straight down to the ground. Now, while he's holding in this position as a coach, you're looking at a midline from the shoulder all the way down to the glutes to the bottom knee is in a straight line. Go ahead and come up. One of the things that you'll see a lot of athletes do is we get a lot of athletes that are anterior rotated in the hips, so their hips naturally sit a little bit forward. They haven't quite learned how to roll into neutral pelvic position. So they'll start here, and in order to gain that tall position, they'll go into a hyperextended position, which is a compensation pattern, creates a lot of stress on the lumbar spine. So that's one of the reasons that we use this exercise in the iso hold, because we're able to tell a lot with the athlete. Go ahead and relax. We're able to tell a lot with the athlete where our issues are, where we have tightness, and some of the things that we might need to put into the program to fix this movement pattern. Secondary to that movement is pretty simple. Brian's going to be in the same position. All we're working now is basically the same movement, but now we're going through the range of motion up and down for repetitions. Early on, a lot of times we'll go down, pause, 1, 2, coming out of the isos, come up, and then eventually we'll get to the point where we'll progress this exercise where he's just up and down through the range of motion. Okay, third progression of the exercise, Brian's going to come up here. He's going to elevate his back foot up on a box anywhere from 2 to 6 inches, and we're going to go through the same movement. Okay, make sure we're pulling down the rib cage. We've got good posture, and then straight up and down. Like this, we're able to increase the range of motion and really work the exercise. And again, we're increasing the range of motion, preparing him to move through the range of motion as the exercise advances. Okay, last progression. And obviously we're using a bench. You can use a bench, put a half foam roller on it, and some companies actually make a piece of equipment that has a roller on it that you can put your foot on the roller. It's a piece of equipment you just move out when you're doing rear foot elevated split squats. But now, same thing. Okay, same movement pattern. We're always making sure we're getting into that proper position. If he's got a little bit of forward lean on the upper body, I'm okay with that as long as that forward lean is true all the way down to the bottom knee, because we're maintaining that neutral pelvic position. Notice as he goes down, he's not letting the knee drive forward. He's actually taking the back knee and driving it back towards the bench so that he is loading the back side of his body and not sitting forward, loading only the front side of his body and then creating bad mechanics and a shearing effect in the knee by getting out on the toe. So that's a rear foot elevated split squat progression. One of the things that we didn't do in the video is that obviously as you move through these movements, you can progress them within the movement by simply adding a weight vest, by adding dumbbells, by adding a goblet position. You can go contralateral, ipsilateral. So there's a ton of different ways to advance the progression based on where the athlete is. Maybe they're very good at the split squat or the lower elevated split squat, but they're not quite really ready to progress onto this movement. If it's more of a structural thing, then we need to go back in and do things to actually fix some of those movement issues. If it's in terms of they're just not ready for the advanced movement, we can find ways to progress the exercise within it by simply adding some load and some resistance to the movement.